All right. This is now your official welcome. So, welcome. I am seeing that there are chairs over here on this side, so if any of you who are standing would like to come over and find those chairs, and there's some in the middle here too, and some over in here, so there's probably another 30 seats that you're welcome to come in and find, and it's good to have you here. I want to invite Chrystal up to start us off. This is Marlin's daughter, and we look forward to hearing a bit of a life sketch and stories from her, and so give her your support and love through the process. Yes.
Oh, 2 microphones. It's funny, we were just joking about because my partner and I for work, we talk in front of people all the time, but it's totally different when I know like every other person in a row, right? So, and watching that is hard, but also pretty awesome. So thank you everyone for coming today. Some of you don't know me at all because I left four-wheeling a long time ago and went into education, but I absolutely, apparently I'm not loud enough. Okay, anyway, thank you for joining us today. So to get us started, I'm just gonna do a brief overview of my dad's life. It's gonna, you don't have to worry, I promise it'll be pretty quick and, just like Marlin always did. So, promise it's not that long. He has better jokes. So Dad may have been the king of slow, but he was also the king of stories. And one of my favorites was when he would introduce me to people who had never met me before as being from his first marriage, because I wasn't always out four-wheeling. And just seeing the looks on their faces and then looking at him and then looking at my mom, they were like, but you look like him. So Marlin was born September 16th, 1955 in Glendale, California, and he grew up in Tujunga on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Better known today as Sunland, for those of you who live down there and weren't there back in the day, but my dad would always laugh about the name change and say, it is not Sunland, it is Tujunga. So those of you from that area, I'm sure you can relate. Prior to his birth, the ladies at the church held a baby shower for my grandma Alice. Wait for it. The baby was going to be named Judy Joyce. Everyone swore that Grandma Alice was having a baby girl because of the way she was carrying. So everyone was quite surprised when Grandma had a boy. My grandparents picked a random name of a person in their church that they liked the sound of Marlin. So that's how we ended up with that. The funny thing is that I was finally the first girl in 3 generations. So Grandma used to always say, well, at least I finally got my girl. Growing up, Dad attended a small elementary school and then later attended Glendale Adventist Academy, where he met quite a few of you in this room today. The Czajkowski family lived in a 1-bedroom home, and not gonna get sad. They lived in a really small 1-bedroom home, but my dad and his 2 brothers, Paul and Stanley, slept in an even smaller guest house in the backyard on a 3-level bunk. And you know how tall my dad is. The other 2 were even taller than him. The house was constructed by my grandmother's family with wood that they brought down from Walla Walla, Washington, which was pretty amazing. It was, however, a pretty tough life. Sorry. Dad used to say that growing up poor, I got this. Thank you. Thank you, Mama Debbie. Dad used to say that growing up poor and coming from a dysfunctional family contributed to his early academic struggles. I can't see, otherwise he'd be fine right now. So his childhood home was later condemned and demolished and really truly brought him a lot of closure. My grandparents were an interesting pair, to say the least, which explains a lot about my dad. Grandpa could be harsh, stubborn, and was staunchly proud to be a descendant of Poland. Grandpa worked only a short while throughout Dad's life. He had a track record of quitting due to coworkers for making Polish jokes. However, As many of you know, my dad, he loved Polish jokes. My grandmother, on the other hand, had the kindest voice and a heart of gold. She worked many different jobs, from sewing to washing to house cleaning. She was an irresistible force, determined to support her family. She also had a story for everything and could make you feel like you were the most important person in her life at that moment. Sound like someone we knew? She had a tremendous influence on Dad. As you can imagine, Dad and Grandpa did not get along very well, and Grandpa was home a lot, so that meant my dad was not. Dad would tell us stories of dumpster diving for random items to create his masterpieces, and then walking and walking and walking just to find the time to pass the day, all the while dreaming about someday owning his own car. And that was always a big deal. He also told us about the many families who gave him a place in their homes, so he always had somewhere to go. And a place to eat, and a lot of you are here today. Whew. Thank you for that. Okay, I swear there's jokes coming. Dad was always looking for a way out of LA, and he finally found it through a state grant. Dad was awarded a 2-year grant to help pay for college as long as he received an actual degree. So he decided to attend Pacific Union College up in Northern California, which was exactly as far as he could get away from LA. His ultimate goal was to become an industrial arts teacher with an emphasis in auto mechanics. It was at PUC where he met Christine Hewson. Mom and Dad would have actually never met if it wasn't for my mom's brother, my Uncle Paul. Dad and Paul met back in their junior year at GAA. One day, Paul invited Dad over to play pool. When he arrived, Mom was reading on a couch in a halter top and hot pants, like you do. She hasn't seen this. So Paul said, "This is my sister, and this is my friend Marlin." And Mom remembers saying something like, "That's nice," went to her room, slammed the door, and never came out until after he left. A couple years later, Mom was looking for a car ride home to LA for spring break. A friend of a friend mentioned that a classmate was giving rides to LA. And who was this classmate? Well, it was my dad, of course, the same guy she refused to speak to the years prior. Mom was desperate, so she accepted the ride. During the trip, Mom was in the passenger seat, Dad was in the driver's seat with the guitar that sat in the middle. They also had a young couple with them in the back seat. Mom and Dad spent most of the car ride talking about Paul, her brother Paul. There's another brother Paul, there's Pauls everywhere in our family, comparing notes about the stories he used to tell. However, Mom was quick to set Dad straight about some of Paul's embellishments. One such story related to when Paul was driving the family car to school. One day, he just didn't show up with the car. Dad and his other friends asked him, "Where's the car?" And Paul told them it was in the shop. But what actually happened was Paul and some buddies went egging, and some of the eggs broke open in the car, and Grandpa needed to clean the car, so he was obviously in a lot of trouble. And so they spent most of the trip laughing and just joking about my uncle, who unfortunately was not able to make it today. During a stop for gas, Mom went inside to use the restroom. The couple in the back seat asked Dad, "When are you getting married?" Married, Dad said, "I don't even really know her." And then they laughed. The couple told Dad that they did not believe him. So when the trip resumed, Dad tried to give Mom the silent treatment, which we all know how that goes for him, so it didn't last very long. Their first unofficial date was during that spring break on a trip to Irwindale Raceway to watch the drag strip races. Believe it or not, Dad actually enjoyed driving really fast. Mom has many fond memories of driving around in Dad's 57 Chevy. And at the end of spring break, they drove back alone. By the end of the 2-year grant, Dad had completed his AA degree. His professors found him to be very talented and wanted him to stay on and finish his BA, but he couldn't afford the tuition. Dang it.
Okay, you got this.
So Dad started looking for work instead, and he chose Fresno Adventist Academy, which offered him a ground maintenance and bus driver position as well as housing on campus. So Mom and Dad ended up living in what many of us in this room know as the mansion in the back corner on campus. Dad had many great memories from FAA that he would tell us and made a lot of lifetime friends here who put up with his shenanigans for a very long time. Thank you, Bevin. In August of 1975, Mom and Dad got married down in La Crescenta, California, and they lived at FAA for another year before buying a home basically across the street. In 1978, I was born, and that's really the highlight of the story. Obviously still euphoric from my arrival, Dad decided to open his new automotive shop a year later, the same year. Wow, my jokes are falling. Because why not have a kid and try to start a business at the same time? After about a year, it didn't, wasn't so smooth, I'm sure, because I have no energy. Yeah. He was hired as a machinist, which gave him more time at home. He still dreamed of owning his own shop and reopened his business, only to shut it down 2 years later when the same machine shop needed him back. They couldn't find anyone with the same work ethic to replace him. In October of 1980, my parents provided me with a little brother to pick on. And after 8 years as a machinist, Dad decided once and for all to open a shop. That was the beginning of Marlin's automotive and truck repair. He hired Tony Novielli, a former student at FAA, and after a few years, they became Marlin and Tony's Auto Repair. It was at this time that Dad purchased the infamous red truck. And that is when his obsession with going slower than a Jeep began. That's all we heard about. It's okay. I had one for a small amount of time, but it didn't go so well. After tinkering and playing on the rocks, Marlin Crawler began in 1994. Really, I only remember in those early days was tracing gasket patterns and copying Dad's drawings to create the how-to manuals and the catalogs, which we have one that we actually managed to save back there on one of the tables. Your typical childhood. Most of the wheeling stories will be shared by you a little later, but the memory that sticks out the most for me happened at my dad's favorite place, Panamint Valley. Dad rigged up an awesome setup for Mike and me in the back of the truck. That's right, they were.
Brat seats.
Brat seats, yeah. Hey, but we had full seat belts. We were safe. Pool noodles on the side. Yeah. And when we were going up some of the falls, honestly, my brain is now hurting because I can't remember if we were coming down or going up, but it's fine. We were parked at the top of one of the falls, and I remember looking up at those amazing walls towering over us. And as I stared, I thought, hey, the walls are so tall, they seem to be moving. And then I realized they weren't moving, I was. The truck was slowly rolling towards the edge of the waterfall, and my brother and I are just like, whoa, this is cool. We had no idea. Turns out, Dad forgot to set the parking brake. There was a lot of commotion, and I remember Jason Maxon jumping in the truck to hit the brake, but then my mom was trying to get over from the passenger side, so he smashed her foot. And by the time my dad got back over, he swore he wasn't secretly trying to get rid of us. That is the day that I first remember him saying,
What a bonehead.
aside from four-wheeling, Dad greatly enjoyed trains. We used to joke that he was born at the wrong time. He spent quite a bit of his time as a conductor for the day in Roaring Camp in Felton, which is out by the coast. We also visited every train museum we could find. He especially enjoyed Shay locomotives for their, wait for it, gear-driven design. To this day, I still know that the boilers are offset to counterbalance the weight and that each axle has a separate bevel gear and that the Shay's tractive effort was an awesome due to the piston striking at a high ratio so that the, that the wheel revolution was so great that they would grab that traction and not melt the track. That's right. But of course, why do I know this? Oh, Marlin. I'm also certain that he would be psyched that I start a doctoral program next month. Oh, sorry. At Purdue University, both because I will be a Boilermaker and because their mascot is a mini locomotive. My dad and mom's favorite activity outside of wheeling was cruising. From the Panama Canal to Alaska, they traveled the slow way. This was also the best way to keep dad from working and actually take some time to enjoy a vacation. Many of you in this room have experienced that silly "I'm on a boat" side of my dad. It is very fitting that his last days were spent on a cruise doing what he enjoyed most, talking to every random person he could possibly find. I hope I did my dad justice by rambling on this long. And after all, we're used to running on Marlin time. Thank you.
It's not, I think it's only a couple of times in a lifetime that you get to be in a room with the caliber of people that we are in this room here together. Would you just look around and see the tribute to Marlin's life that we all are? What an incredible group of people. My name's Steve Hamilton. I get to be the pastor today for this sacred time and space in honoring and remembering Marlin's life. It's deeply moving to me, and I want to say thank you to the family for the opportunity. I'm a little bit of a crier. I'm okay for now. Yeah. Would you give Christine a hand for just mothering everyone? Thank you. Run a little nonprofit, been doing off-road stuff with high school kids for about 20 years. And Marlin was always so supportive and encouraging and just felt like a cheerleader to us when we would cross paths on the trail and we'd have a bunch of kids in rock crawlers. To give you a little bit of street cred in this group, I have run Surprise Canyon and Panamint Valley, so I just wanted to put that out there. Very cool to see Richard Gotea here, one of the old timers in that whole crowd. I believe that today is also a significant opportunity for each of us to rearrange the value furniture in our lives, if needed, to reflect what really matters. Because we watched that in Marlin's life. He had a high value on family and work ethic and friends and helping whoever was in need. And I believe that today in his memory should be a time where each of us choose to rearrange the furniture a little bit to become more in line with those values that he modeled for us. When I look at this room, I really think that the demographics of this gathering is a tribute to Marlin's life. Christine and Michael and Chrystal, you guys model to us what family should be. And I think it's no accident that in this room, there's a diversity that is very hard to find in our world today. In case you didn't know, there are a lot of church people here today. And there are a lot of off-road industry people here today. And there's a lot of friends here today, a lot of old friends. It's hard to make new old friends, and there are a lot of old friends. And this room essentially is a demographic of people who so intentionally, maybe subconsciously, blur the lines between family and friends. I can't tell you that over the past few months, knowing that we were coming out here for this service, that people have shared stories with me, and so often they would say, Marlin was like an uncle to me. Marlin was like a second father to me. We had a brotherhood. There's this blurred line where friendship somehow crosses over and becomes family. And what an incredible tribute to Marlin and who he was. We are today. A lot of the stories that I hear start with on my first roundup. How many of you have a story like that? On my first roundup. I'm just curious on that. Yep. On my first roundup. So on my first Marlin Crawler roundup, I didn't know that there was such a thing. I showed up at the Rubicon Trail with a rear-engine rock buggy on 40s we only were able to say Jeep once in this gathering. We had a Jeep on 42s, and we showed up with some high school students, and our whole goal was to set a record time to see how fast that we could make it across the Rubicon Trail. Not to flex or brag, but when we finally got the chance to set that time, it's under 2 hours from the lookout above Cadillac to crossing the dam on Loon Lake. You can give me a hand for that if you'd like. But imagine our consternation when we showed up with high school students and full tilt cars that were made to go as fast as we could over big rocks. And we showed up right at the tail end of hundreds of vehicles that's life goal was to go as slow as possible. We realized we had literally showed up to do a trail speed goal behind the world's slowest rock crawlers, and they were proud of that. Going as slow as possible was the highest value, and it was an experience that left a lasting impression. There's more to that story. We can tell stories out in the truck show as it gets started, but Marlin was welcoming always. I had an industry person tell me this week, he said, Marlin was never marketing. He was just always welcoming. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. And Marlin modeled welcoming to us. And I hope that value imprints itself more and more each day as we celebrate his life. This is a profile of a person that Scripture would celebrate, that God would be proud of, a welcoming person, because after all, Jesus is the most welcoming person planet Earth has ever seen. The biblical profile of God's wish for mankind is that his people would be kind and generous, honest, hardworking, and that they would make the world around them a better place. And Marlin fit that profile. Jesus said in Mark chapter 12, verse 30 and 31, Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And verse 31 says, the second is this, the second commandment, Jesus says, love your neighbors as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Jesus also said in John chapter 13, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Jesus did not give a benchmark of church attendance, dollar amount in the offering plate, or denominational affiliation or dress code. He said, here's how you'll know if your heart is toward God, is that if it's toward mankind and you love your neighbor as yourself. And in the question that Jesus asked to the rich young ruler, or the question that the rich young ruler asked Jesus, who's my neighbor? The rhetorical answer to that is, you are to be neighbor to everyone. And I want to testify that Marlin felt like everyone's neighbor. No matter what trail, or on the roadside, or in the shop, or in a tech forum online, Marlin lived life with this idea that everyone was his neighbor, and he welcomed all. I think it's appropriate to say that to be a good human like Marlin Czajkowski, Jesus would say, now you're on to something. I got a text message from, I guess I won't mention any names, but Fred Williams this morning. He said this: there are few men as well known, memorable, respected, and liked in the off-road industry, with a last name almost no one could pronounce. You know, that happens because of deep character, of living life on purpose with intention. Marlin lived with a devotion to his family, an integrity and work ethic. His example of love and faithfulness to his wife, 47 and a half years. This year would have been your 50th. Next year, your 50th. You guys worked together. You raised children together. You traveled together. You enjoyed each other. You did life together. We watched that. Some of us would come and show up at off-road events, and instead of being part of sort of the Marlin rock star show where he was dishing out tech advice for the 487 millionth time, we'd find an ice chest and sit under the easy up and chat with you and just watch the show go on. You were a companion in life. He loved being with you. Yes. I'm going to wrap this. But here's one thing that Marlin exemplified and lived that I do not believe he would make mention of or say it. So I'm going to say it for him. We watched Marlin choose to resist bitterness and resentment in life and instead choose tenderness, kindness, and love. Here's what I'll say. It's just us here. We can talk, right? I have a bit of knowledge that the church did not always treat Marlin well. But Marlin chose not to hold bitterness and resentment, but to be supportive and positive toward those he loved. He always encouraged me as a pastor, and it was deeply impactful on me. And while I'm saying some of these frank truths, let me also just recognize that the off-road industry did not always treat Marlin well. He was taken advantage of at times. Yet Marlin chose not to live with bitterness or resentment, but he continued to live as he always lived, giving an encouraging word, lending a hand, and a spare part or a piece of technical advice. God bless Marlin for that. He lived a biblical profile of God's wish for mankind to be generous, honest, hardworking, and make the world around him a better place, and he chose to do it with kindness and tenderness rather than to build up bitterness and resentment. Today, I pray for all of us that we would choose to follow his example in that. It's an incredible example of a way of living life. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, Paul, the apostle, says this: brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. Therefore, the Apostle Paul says, therefore encourage one another with these words. The Bible teaches that this is not the end, that there is an eternity waiting. And I believe Marlin would ask of us to hold on to that hope today. Revelation chapter 7, verse 9 says, this is John, the disciple, who we also call John the Revelator because he wrote the book of Revelation. He saw in vision in Revelation 7, it says, after this I looked, and before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb of God. These are God's people, and there's a diversity that is recognizable to the apostle, or to the disciple John. And he sees them in vision. Let me get a little theological on you. What we understand biblically as a prophetic vision is that John saw a picture of a future event, not some metaphorical thing. So he was looking at the actual group of people, the actual event, just in prophetic vision given to him by God. So he's looking at the actual saved of God, and it's a great multitude with diversity. Here's what it's like, I think, as John looked at this. Imagine him looking out at the great multitude, and he recognizes that he sees this image of the future. And if I were John, I'd be looking for my face. Like, did I make it? Am I there? Am I in? And maybe the accompanying angel, at least in my imagination, gave him a little elbow and said to John, he was like, hey, who's that guy over there? And John looks over and he sees his own face. Hallelujah. I think it's like a real life picture of Where's Waldo. Have you ever seen those kids' books? Where's Waldo? Waldo, you're looking for the guy. You're going to love the way I've put this together. He's looking for the guy in the red hat. Hallelujah. And as I look at this picture painted of Scripture of the redeemed from all ages, I'm looking through that crowd and I'm looking for a red hat. And it's not Waldo who's under there, it's Marlin. Yeah. So I look forward to an eternity with Marlin. Good memories, lots of laughs, good food is important also. And the most important value to Marlin, he wants his friends and his family to be right there. Because it's tough for Marlin to have a small gathering of close friends and family, because we're all there. So until then, let's keep the legend alive, and may the storytelling continue. And it gives me great pleasure to invite Michael, his son from his first marriage, to come up and share with us some more of the story.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hadn't heard it said before, so I can make fun of you and the pastor later, but welcome, everyone. Thank you for all that traveled very far, including international and out-of-state people. Can I see a hand? Who's out-of-state or international? That's amazing. You know, we have this award called the Iron Butt Award, and Marlin would find who's got the iron butt for traveling so far in their bumpy Leaf Spring over FJ40 Land Cruiser or something. So I want to see some more hands. I want to see who has wheeled with Marlin. This is more than I was expecting. Okay, who has camped with Marlin? You guys, look around. Look at, this is crazy. How about this? Who's gone on a hike with Marlin? All right, who has actually ridden in the crawler truck? No, okay, who has bought parts from Marlin? Wow. All right, who has a Marlin part on their rig? Better be all the same of you. All right, who went to church with Marlin? Wow, look at this. Who has been to a Marlin Crawler roundup? Oh, that's more than I was expecting there. Who remembers when Marlin had a full beard? Met him in person with a full beard. Okay, I'm getting the number down here. Okay. Who has worked for Marlin? Wow. Well, okay, I got one more. Who had Marlin as their bus driver? All right, so I have shared so many Marlin stories at so many events, but we want to keep time. I really want to hear your guys' stories. So instead of doing what I normally do to share stories, I decided I had a whole thing written up and just axed it. And what I want to do instead is share how to become a Marlin. And the first step would be to be extremely hardworking. Who has ever stopped by the shop after hours to pick up parts? After we've closed, you drive in late at night and Marlin steal their work and trying to get parts for you. Can I see your hands? Who has had Marlin deliver parts to them? Yeah, he would work past midnight. Growing up, I wouldn't see him till like 1, 2 a.m. I had the front room, and you would hear him park the car and come in and take off his boots. I'd often wake up and hear him, and this is just day after day, over and over. Just the hardest working man I've ever known. Youth leader at church, go far out of his way to provide a service. How about this? Who had ever had Marlin invite them because maybe the job was going on, and he said, hey, why don't you stay at my house or come over and take a shower? Can I see hands? Who stayed at Marlin's house? Wow. Are you sure? You're not lying over here? Okay. Yeah, who knows what's known as Marlin time? My wife thinks it's transferred to me, but I reject this. We can argue that later. Marlin was a member of over 20 clubs at one time, and he was president of many of these clubs, and he was always active and always working and still raising the family and putting food on the table for us. That's a hard worker. That's the first step to be a Marlin. The second step is to have an obsessive attention to detail, and I don't need to mention that too much on that. Who has a part on their rig that has Marlin's handwriting on it somewhere? It's crazy. Marlin has documented everything. If you've ever been to our shop, if you ever remember our old crawler book, who's got a crawler that has a stamped number, that had a number stamped on the crawler? So I want to show this book. Marlin, he started a little side business called Marlin Toy Works, and he got into a lot of machining, which Chrystal had mentioned that he had a big background on. And he has this surfacer, and this guy just documented every cylinder head, however many thousands of inches that he took off, every single date. Some of these have what temperature it was in the room when he was doing the valve job, because he wouldn't run the swamp cooler because he's trying to save electricity. It's just on and on and on. There's even where's Tom Allen at? Where's Tom? Tom's got a truck out here, that beautiful red first-gen truck, and Tom's name is like one of the last, is this correct? The last entry in this book, and it's really cool. And this is something that I think kind of led to our friend Chris Geiger, who is here today. Where's Chris? Chris put up on our website, on our About Us page, and labeled Marlin as an inspirational genius. And I think just his attention to detail and his hard work. So step 2 is that attention to detail, I would say, is needed to become a Marlin. Step 3, I would say, and some of you may not be blessed with this gift. My wife thinks I wasn't sometimes. It's to have an incredible memory. You need to have that passion to just ask and question things, and that's how he just learned things, and he kind of just became, we say a walking encyclopedia, but it's a walking Wikipedia, right? So. And he would remember just fine details of people. Let me show of hands, who has ever, when Marlin has walked up and you say, hey Marlin, you probably don't remember me, and he did. Has anyone, Marlin comes up with obscure memories about you? So we went to Colorado for an FJ Cruiser Summit, and this guy comes up to our booth and he goes, hey Marlin, you probably don't remember me, and that's all he could say. And then Marlin already said, wow, you lived in Southern California, and you lived down this cul-de-sac, and I couldn't swing my trailer around because you had this tree with this dumpster, and your daughter was in nursing school. Hey, did your daughter ever finish nursing school? This is literally what he asked this guy. And we're in Colorado, and he connected that from back in California. Just that memory is needed to be a Marlin. And yeah, good luck. That one. Step 4, I would say, is to have an endless passion. This guy was crazy passionate about all things. He really wanted to give respect for Toyotas. He wanted to put Toyotas on the map. He would say this a lot. Who here who used to wheel back in the day, I'm speaking for my Toyota friends, who would be on a trail and you're the only Toyota on the trail? Did that ever happen? That's okay, this is more than I was thinking. There was a guy down the street from us called Stan the Man. It was a Jeep shop right down the road from us. And when Marlin came up with the dual case idea and he took it there, this guy, Stan, says, "What are you doing? This is a 4-cylinder, long bed, long wheelbase. You can't find any parts for this thing. No, this is never going to sell. This is retarded." He just told Marlin, "You're just crazy." And now I want to ask, who here has ever gone rock crawling? That's because of Marlin. And this endless passion led, I had to ask my mom to help me with this memory. They were up in Reno. Toyota was unveiling a new Tacoma, presumably the second-gen Tacoma. It could have been in 2004. And the Toyota was doing an event, and we don't recall why Marlin was there, but a few businesses had booths, and Toyota was there, and they had brought along Ivan Stewart to help show off the new Tacoma. And because it's got that cool thing called an IFS, it flexes sweet. So, I'll teach Steve about some IFS stuff later. And people were coming up to Marlin and asking for signatures, and Marlin didn't have a pen. And this lady went over she didn't know who Ivan was, and said, "Hey, sir, do you have a pen I can use?" And Ivan thought she wanted to give him an autograph. And she says, "Thanks," and took it over to Marlin. Ivan Stewart's pen, and Marlin kept that, and then he began, and then Ivan walked over and said, "Hey, who are you? Like, what's all this going on here?" So you get to that point by having an endless passion for whatever it is in your life, whatever journey you're on, whatever occupation you're in, be passionate about what you're doing. That's what Marlin definitely had. Step 5 is, we know this, it's helping others. Who's ever been repaired or rescued by Marlin? Can I see your hands? Who's ever seen Marlin welding on the trail? This guy created a welder before he created rock crawling in dual cases. He had a welder back in the early 90s, and he was already out welding people when, it's insane. I don't want to get into stories. I'll be here all day or all week. But Marlin was very selfless. I have a story about. Okay, fine. I'll just tell it. So he got on Rubicon. No one knew about welders back then, and this was past the Granite Bowl. There were some granite slabs, and there's a lot of traffic. And Marlin rolls up, and he's at the end of all these Jeeps, and he goes up the front to see what's going on. And Sierra Trek. Okay, I've been corrected by Mrs. Crawler over here. And the guy had like a link mount or a motor mount had ripped off his frame. And Marlin's like, "Oh, I got a welder." And the guy's like, "You have a welder?" And Marlin says, "Sure, let me come up front." And they're like, "All right, let's make some room." And Marlin hops in his Toyota mini truck and starts making his way up. And when the guy saw he had a mini truck, he said, "What? I don't want to be repaired by no Toyota. Get out of here." And then Marlin's like, "Okay." And then they let him pass. And just no one knew about welders back then. And another story, we're talking about Panamint a lot, and there was one time my sister was there, and we got to the very last waterfall. I think this is waterfall 7, and there's a lot of water rushing in over your hood and so on, and a lot of these cruisers would run like steel radiators with no clutch fan. I probably don't need to ask for a show of hands for that. And water had gone, a lot of water gone up into the radiator. You know what happens when that fan doesn't stop spinning? It went right into the radiator. And it just cut out the core, and you started just dumping coolant all over the place. And so Marlin's got a brazing kit, of course. But then it starts snowing on us, and it's dark, and Chrystal and I are in the cab with Mom, and we are freezing. And I should have had you say that. And Marlin just spends as long as it took to braze a radiator in the snow on the last waterfall. It's just crazy. This guy was the definition of selfless. He would always put the needs of others over his own. He's the most selfless person I've ever known. And that's definitely a big part in becoming a Marlin is helping others. And the final step is building lasting relationships. And I want to ask a series of questions here. Who has known Marlin for 10 years or longer? See your hands? Wow. 20 years or longer? 30 years or longer? No way. 40? Scott Johnson's here. 50? It must be 50 years that you've known him. Okay, I can go more. 60 years. These hands over here, should I go more? No, 60 is good. We've got guests here who came all the way from Tennessee, who Marlin, growing up, stayed, when they lived in Southern California, Marlin stayed with Kim Otis here, if you want to raise her hand. Her brother is Marlin's best friend growing up. This is Kerry? Kerry, thank you so much for being here. Marlin's best friend growing up. How many here have Marlin's cell phone number? Yeah, don't call, it's disconnected. How many have received fresh baked bread from Marlin Crawler or Automotive? Bread? Yeah? Was the bread any good? We made it. Marlin had a bread maker in the shop, and people would pay their bill, and Marlin would offer them like a loaf of fresh baked bread. And I remember when we got like this turbo baker that would do it in like 2 hours, and he knew the job would be finishing up, and he'd put all the flour, and he'd make cottage cheese bread and anything you could think of. And then he'd have that bread warm, and the customer would pick up the job, and here's bread. Okay, how about this? How about little heart crackers? Anyone get given heart crackers by Marlin? From the bakery. There's a bakery here in town that make these amazing heart crackers. Okay, see the hands again? That's awesome. James Atteberry gave you some. I hope you hope you still have those. You know?
We had them on the shelf so you could have them for later.
They're all expired anyway. Okay, who had ever had Marlin take them out to dinner? Can I see your hand? Breakfast, lunch, and then never pay for your, and then he would pay for your bill. Can I see? That's Marlin. Just incredible. Building that relationship and building the friendships. I think I will see some hands for this. Who remembers the exact, maybe month or year that you met Marlin? Can I see hands? I'm always amazed when we go places. People can remember, and I think we're seeing it here with some upcoming stories, that people just remember where they were, what part of the trail they were on, what part was broken, how Marlin got to them, how many relays to the CB it took, and how many hours they had to wait for Marlin to come up the trail, and finally they got rescued by the red truck, and it's really amazing. And Steve mentioned this earlier, and I just want to ask one last question. Finally, how many of you think Marlin as a father? Any more solid? He was the father of a lot of people. Where's Sam Silvera? Where's Slinky? I texted Slinky. He came on short notice. He flew in from Hawaii, and I said, "Man, you got to be there." And then Sam says he was like a father to all of us, and I'll never forget that, Sam. And I think this is the true way that Marlin profited in life. So thank you.
Independent suspension, it flexes sweet. I'll give Michael's cell phone out to anyone who wants it for that comment. Last year at Easter Safari, Michael and I grabbed coffee in Moab, and I sat there. It was just right after Marlin had passed, and the family had just really been inundated by so many stories of the impact that Marlin's life had made on them. And I remember sitting there across from Michael just thinking, what an incredible man Marlin raised as his son. And you make us all proud today.
shows the father Marlin was.
Yeah, 100%. So we are just doing fine on schedule. We scheduled time for storytelling because it brings life to the memories. And so if you've got stories that you want to share or a way that Marlin impacted your life, a word of wisdom that changed perspective and helped you, I'm going to walk around, raise your hand, and I'll bring this microphone to you. I think I'm going to ask my daughter Ashley to carry around the second microphone so the family has the audio recording of it. And we're just going to take our time through this. So it's always kind of the first ones to break the ice, and those stories start flowing. So I see Richard over here. Ashley, you can come with me, and we'll make this happen.
Here, there's quite a few pictures on of the red truck and Marlin on Surprise Canyon. And that was one of the favorite things that he did. And the Bakersfield Trailblazers Surprise was our adopted trail. We did all the trail maintenance, and we led the paid run up Surprise Canyon and Panamint Valley Days every year. And it's fun just visiting with some of you already. Before we started, I met quite a few people, including you, that would see us in the magazines as young people and dream about growing up and getting a 4x4 and being able to do that kind of stuff. 14. So, but anyway, I was with Marlin. We did, we went up there and we cut brush to open up the trail. And, the day before we'd haul all the food. We'd send a cook crew up and haul all the food and everything up. And then we did at Panamint Valley Days, and we'd have about 20 vehicles. I think we always limited it to 20 vehicles. No hydraulic winches. And but Marlin showed up one of the times on the pre-run to cut brush with this massive brush cutter. And I don't know where he got it. Today you'd say he got it on Craigslist. But it was like a big weed eater with a great big long shaft. It had shoulder straps and a rack across your belt and two big handles like this. And it had a big saw blade on the end of it, like a table saw blade. And you would just fire that thing up and stand back and everybody get out of the way. And man, would that thing cut brush. But anyway, lots of great times. Dale Walton used to be the leader of running the Panamint Surprise Canyon, but when Dale had to stop doing it, then Marlin took over being the leader. He would dress up in old miner outfit with hat and boots and the shirts and all this stuff, and just we'd tell stories but anyway, lots and lots of great times. And unfortunately, Surprise Canyon permanently closed and couldn't do it anymore. So a lot of you that wanted to do it didn't get the chance. But for many, many years, did the pre-running and that run. And of course, like all of you, plenty of stories of Marlin camping and running and other things. But Surprise Canyon, he loved it, and that was very special.
Thank you. Looks like I'm going that way. If I'm standing in a section, that's your moment of opportunity. We'll work section by section.
Hello, my name is Kim. Was Kim Meyer, Kim Otis now. But I knew Marlin. I don't even remember how old I was when I met Marlin. Back in Tahunga, we were members of the same church. I just want to say Marlin would love this gathering. I wish he could be here for it. But Marlin was best friends with my brother, Kerry, and Marlin was like a brother to me. He was a part of the family, definitely. Kerry and Marlin helped each other discover how to work on engines, motors. I remember they would somehow get one and rip it apart because it wasn't working, and then they'd put it back together and it would work. I don't know how they learned to do that. No one taught them. They just helped each other. Marlin hung out at our place a lot. He was part of the family. And eventually, well, I remember when he was in high school, he went to Glendale Adventist Academy. He would tell us about all his buddies at school, and it was quite interesting. When he left for college, he left a big hole in our family, and I know my brother really missed him. But he would come back to visit. He would tell us all the stories about his college years and his buddies at college. He started coming home, and he was talking about this girl he met. Her name was, we called her Chris, but I think everyone calls her Christine these days. And he would come home and talk about her and just talk about her and talk about her. And he would say, I can't believe someone like that likes someone like me. But what I believe is it was a God-given gift for both of them. She was a perfect mate in every way, and I think he was for her too. I was in their wedding. I was a bridesmaid, as were my siblings. And when they moved to Fresno, my husband and I would come up and visit them. We stayed in the mansion a couple times with them, and in their home that they bought. I think Marlin was so happy to have a wonderful home, and he had beautiful children and loved his kids. He was very blessed, and I'm very proud of the life he built and the family that he built and the business. He was an awesome guy. Oh, and my mother's here. She would like to say a few words.
Meyer, and I can't stand up, so you don't want to have to pick me up off the floor. But I'm here today with the daughter that just spoke. Her husband is here also. They live in Tennessee. And my son, Kerry, who just sat down, is also living in Tennessee. And they came this distance so they could say something about Marlin. I want to tell you, Marlin was the most honest boy that ever stole a bicycle. He came to the house and he had a bicycle. Well, his family didn't have money, and they were quite poor, in fact. And so he wanted a bicycle, but he didn't have any money, and he wasn't old enough really to earn enough money to buy one. But he showed up one day with a bicycle, and I said, Marlin, where'd you get the bicycle? I think it was a Rally bicycle. I remember that name. I don't know if he told me where he got it, but he found it leaning up against a fence someplace.
It was abandoned.
Yes, it was abandoned. Anyway, but that bothered him. It bothered him terribly that he had somebody's bicycle, and he knew how badly that person wanted that bicycle. So he turned right around and took it back. Marlin was really something. He was like a son to me. I consider that I was his second mother. We used to go to eat in Mexican restaurants. My husband loved to take us out. He would take Marlin and sometimes his younger brother, Paul, to a Mexican restaurant. They learned how to eat, and boy, they always ordered the biggest plate available. There's something about Marlin that was always special. He eventually one day was able to buy a little car. It was a little blue Ford. And the daughter that just spoke over here needed a car. So he didn't mean to give it away, but he let her use his car. I don't think he ever got it back. Polish jokes? Oh my goodness. The kids at school knew he was Polish, actually half Czechoslovakian and Polish, but they would tell him jokes all the time, intending to embarrass him. But he could tell them faster than they could. He was really something. We loved having him in our home. We didn't even have a bed for him. He had to sleep on the floor on a couple of quilts with a pillow. But he liked it there, and he was part of our family. We loved him very much, and I'm so proud that he's been able to be a successful person in his life. I think God has really blessed him with his talents. I remember the day they got married, he and Christine. He had been staying at her brother's house, and he came to the wedding with the wrong car. Well, it was his car, but it didn't have the punch in it in the trunk. So he had to go back to the house in Glendale from La Crescenta and get that car that had the punch in the car. They'd loaded the car the night before. So we had to hold the wedding over for several minutes until he got back. Oh boy, what else?
That was Marlin time.
Okay, he was a special son. We really loved him. He could tell jokes faster than anybody else and better. Have I said enough? Oh, my daughter says I've spoken long enough.
Oh, man. Thank you for the heritage of hospitality and open house, friends like family. Yeah.
Yeah, Marlin and I started off before high school. We would go to Songatunga Church, and after church we'd always do stuff like go for hikes, and we'd take a 5-mile hike up to the top of Mount Lukens straight up and come down in no time. And we used to do a lot of hiking. We used to go down to Griffith Park with his mom and dad after church on Saturdays, and then we had bicycles, so even the trash night in Songatunga, we would ride our bicycles all around and dig through all the trash and
Your mother drove you.
and find, yeah, we'd find a lot of things and work on different things. And then Marlin and I were always working on cars at the house there, and he was a good friend. And then when he moved to Fresno, I talked to him a little bit, but we kind of lost touch. But the rest of my family maybe stayed a little bit more in touch with him. But I wasn't up there that much. But then I moved to Tennessee, and I hadn't talked to him in many years. But I liked Marlin. He was a really good man.
And just as a reminder, kind of introduce yourself and maybe the connection, just so that we all get a good feel of how the family fits.
Which one? Hi, my name's Yvonne. Is that coming through? Yep. There it is. My name's Yvonne.
Hold that right into your mouth. There you go. There you go.
My name's Yvonne. Oh, that does work.
Yeah. New
And
technology.
and I am Christine's cousin. So I'm going to elaborate just very briefly on that first date, spring break. She didn't mention that all her cousins were there. And when we heard that Irwindale was having a fox hunt and Shirley Muldowney was driving, and Marlin showed up to take her on that first date, you know we were like pulling his pant legs and grabbing his arm and take us, take us, take us. It's a fox hunt, it's free, it's free. That guy so graciously piled all of us kids in that car. We had the time of our lives. And of course, to this day, I'm a little embarrassed we forced ourselves on that situation, but it was well worth it. But I think that just testifies to his character. What guy on a first date would take a tassel full of little cousins along with? Only him. Thank you.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, you might need to help me. I'm Butch Baker, also known as Texan on all the forums. I bring you heartfelt condolences from Lone Star Land Cruisers, Cottonland Land Cruisers, and the Toyota Trail Riders. The latter two spun off of Lone Star, and Marlin had attended all those events. Many of you know me or know of me. My granddaughter, while at the roundup this past year, said, "Paul, you're famous." I said, "No, baby, I'm notorious. There is a difference." Marlin, however, was famous. I named my dog after Marlin. He liked that a lot, and there's pictures back there on that board of Marlin holding Marlin. I'd heard of Marlin for years. We had several of you guys attend Roundup, and we named Roundup before Marlin had it. They relayed stories about him. My private thoughts were, there's no way he can be that nice. I found out he was coming to Roundup by getting off of a connecting flight that he and Christine was on. We caught him a ride out of DFW all the way to Mason, Texas. I was announcing that he was going to be at our event via our forums, and I was hunting how to spell that last name. I Googled it. Well, Google directed me to an article which began, "Marlin Czajkowski is commonly regarded as the father of modern-day rock crawling." So I used that to introduce him, and I thought how cool it was that we had this guy on our stage in Texas. I handed him the microphone, and he promptly threw me under the bus, backed over me 3 times, and then handed the microphone back. Now, if you don't believe me, those are on YouTube. You can YouTube Marlin Czajkowski at the Roundup and just see what I'm talking about. But that began a relationship, and BigMike asked about if you thought he was your father. He was my brother. We were 7 months apart. I was older than him. I asked him one time why he always called me Mr. Baker. It was a respect thing, he told me. I was older than him. We shared a cabin at Catempsy several times, and these cabins, if you've been in them, they're just 2 beds and a couch and an air conditioner and a heater. And I recall us laying across the cabin after the lights were out and talking back and forth because we had so much in common. We both had a son that we're extremely proud of, that we trained, and we thought the world of him. Although we butted heads with him at time to time, we talked about that too. We also each had a daughter that we didn't look eye to eye on a lot of things, and we wondered about that. But the one thing that Marlin was extremely jealous of me, I did have one perfect child, and she's here with us. Over the years, he and Christine has become a part of our family. I've had his trailer and his truck in my shop in Texas. We were putting tires on his trailer one time to come back, and I offered to balance them for him, and he said, "Well, you don't balance trailer tires." I said, "The balancer's here. Let's balance them and, do it." Well, I get over to ready to balance them, and he's looking over my shoulder, and he wants to learn how to run the spin balancer. So I showed him how, and he balanced the rest of the tires. One of Marlin's favorite things was catching me working on a vehicle on the trail and getting over my shoulder and heckling me. And I can still hear his voice behind me going, "I don't think I would have done it like that." Or I was busting a tie rod end off, and he told me that I needed to put the nut on top of it and save it and all this, and I just whacked it with a hammer and busted it loose. And that's also on YouTube. You can find that argument on YouTube because my guys were taping it, and they've got it up there. I think I called him a crazy Pollock at one time, but yeah, he made an entrance one time. We were arguing and going back and forth, which we did a lot. We loved it. He told me at least he wasn't named after the occupation. We bake bread, so we're bakers. And I informed him that I thought Czajkowski was a poorly made Russian helicopter. One of the things we're very proud of at the Roundup is the state that has the most attendees, other than Texas, is California. We've had you guys come, and you brought Marlin, and there's a lot of you guys that I really consider brothers. I love you just like brothers, and some of you are even the black sheep of the family, the brothers. There's a few things in your life that impact you so greatly that you'll never forget. For me, the first thing I remember is JFK's assassination. Then you walk on a few years, and I remember where I was when I found out Elvis died. Then you go to 9/11. The morning I got the call that Marlin was gone is etched in my brain. As I stood leaning against my dumpster, calling many of you and crying, and it's etched. I'll never forget that day, and I'm sure every one of you are the same way. Roundup was 2 weeks out when we found out about Marlin. We always have a charity raffle at our event. A quick meeting with our board of directors changed our recipient to Christine. Ryan Weichman, who builds our trophies, cut the top off of the trophy he had, and he constructed Marlin's turtle out of nuts and bolts, and the pictures are on the web. You can find it. When we got ready, we auctioned that trophy off. It brought $10,000 the first time. It was donated back, brought $7,500 the second time. And I'm not going to tell you how much we raised for Christine, but we were so blessed, my wife and I, to FaceTime her the next week and send her the money. We've lost several guys over the years in Lone Star Land Cruisers. We started in '96. And we're a big family, and I think that's why Marlin loved our club so much, is because we loved him. And it's not unusual at all for us in our club to hug and say, "I love you," to grown men when we part. And I remember doing that with Marlin. We started a tradition at one year when we bought Marlin a beautiful silver belly hat. And it's back here on the table. And I'll never forget that it's really dusty down there. And a silver belly hat's something you don't want to get dust on. So when I got ready to take it out of the box, I slipped rubber gloves on and invited Marlin to the stage. He did not want to come to the stage with me wearing rubber gloves. This entire organization, TLCA, is a family, and I'm honored to be a small part of it. We should all follow Marlin's example. Be someone at the memorial that there is nobody talking bad of.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I was at the table yesterday, and Christine said, "These are our Texas people." And I would have only made one edit to your speech, and that is that when Marlin backed over you 3 times, it was slowly.
Oh, yeah. You just got to watch the video.
Okay. I think I'm going to move that direction, so if you guys are, well, on the way. Oh. Man, my ADD is popping off right now. Where was the hand that came up right over here? Right here? I'm going to go through this way. Great. Thank you. Hang on to both of them.
Hey guys, my name is Georg. I'm one of those black sheep that Butch was referring to as far as the other Californians go. I also run a Land Cruiser shop in Stockton, so I'm on that other Toyota side. The trip Butch was talking about going to Texas, 12 years ago or so, Marlin called me about a week before and said, "Hey, I need a ride home to California." And we were driving out there, we had my tow rig, and it was going to be good to have a spare driver. So I said, well, of course, So my story is not about off-roading with Marlin, but it's about driving a tow rig, which he sucked at. There were 4 of us in the truck, including myself. It's Dodge with a 2-car trailer behind 2 buggies. And I took the first leg after the raffle because we had to get home. And I drove to Albuquerque and I almost fell asleep. I said, "All right, who wants to take over?" And 2 guys were passed out. Marlin was in the front seat with me. He goes, "Oh, I'll drive. That's fine." I said, "All right, cool. I know you know how to drive a stick, but have you towed a trailer?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, no problem at all." So we switch sides. And we get to the first traffic light, and we're on a one-way street, and you have to take a left onto a fairly big street, and there was no cars anywhere, giant street. And he takes off, and jumps the trailer over the curb, like wheels off the ground. And I thought he ripped the axles out of it. And he just kind of looked over at me and goes, "Oh, we'll be fine." And then he drove for about 6 hours, and I did not sleep. And that was Marlin. You know, we all loved him because he was so genuine. And, you know, he had that uncanny ability to tell you who you were, where he met you, when he met you, what you drove, you know, what year it was, what event it was, all that stuff. It was amazing. Like, he had a photographic memory like nobody else did. And, you know, we all have our stories of how we met Marlin. And I think there's one guy that should tell his story. He can also tell you the story why his truck always looked perfect. And the story he has about meeting Marlin is one of the funniest ones I've ever heard of. Yeah. And that's our buddy Louis sitting in the front row somewhere.
I'll go over to him. I'll go find him. I've heard this story. It's a good one. Where is Louis? Oh, Louis, you're being asked for. I'll go get him.
Okay, they're coming to you now.
While I'm going over to Louie, I don't know if there's a truck in existence that has had more body work done to it over the years. So they want to know how you met Marlin and how his truck showed up at your shop for some body. You tell it.
I'll try. I just took medication. Oh.
If you can't, my son will be able to do it for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just finished my medication. So.
Yeah.
Louis says Mike tells it better. Where's Mike? Oh, here we go. Okay.
All right, guys. Yeah. So, Louie, Marlin had gone to an event at Jose Basin. Yeah, it's already a good story, right? And they were. And they were probably at the raffle at the dinner, and cars were all parked, and it was a lot of really close parking. Okay, they're near $5 Hill.
These details are really important.
These are super important, fine details. Just how Marlin would tell the story. And Marlin was out of the vehicle. He must have then been helping or spotting someone, when all of a sudden Marlin hears word that his truck, the crawler truck, just got backed into. Someone reversed into the crawler truck. And Marlin's like, "What?" And he runs back over, and sure enough, this humongous Chevy K10, this big old Chevy truck just reverses right into the side of the crawler truck. And my dad's like, oh my gosh. And then the guy comes out and he says, "Oh, don't worry, I'm a body guy. My name's Louie, nice to meet you." And that's Louie right over here. And so Marlin had just put the very first prototype dual case into the crawler and into the crawler truck. And Louie had said, "Yo, I'm very, very sorry. I'll take care of this for you. I live up in Oakhurst, which is about an hour and a half out of town. So just bring it on up next week and I'll just repaint it and redo the whole thing." So Marlin was so nervous about all this that he pulls out the crawler and puts in a stock T case, had to find a stock drive line. And then he drives on up there without the crawler because he was so nervous. But yeah, Louie did the body work, and he's been our body man for 30 years.
That's a good story. All right, I'm coming this way. I think our microphone is.
There's some awesome stories here. It's just so cool to see the impact that this man had on everybody. I actually don't really have a story so much as I have an ask of every single person here today. And then every single person who knows somebody that knew Marlin. Every once in a while, we come into an industry in the world that somebody has created that industry, right? We definitely, I think everybody here can agree, Marlin created rock crawling. Yes. Rock crawling would not be where it is today. So he's an innovator, right? We have this amazing person that did some great things with innovation. But we get people like that every once in a while come through life, and they create an industry. We've got the Bill Gates, we've got the what's that Apple guy? Steve Jobs. We've got the Elon Musks. And as I'm kind of saying these names, I'm kind of like, some of these people that create industries, sometimes they have maybe a couple bolts loose. They need a little bit more Loctite to them, right? Marlin was not that. But what's interesting is that you also have another quality to him. And that is you have people that are the face of an industry. You have people that are immediately recognizable that draws more people into an industry, the celebrities of an industry. You have the Ivan Stewarts. You have the Robbie Gordons. You have the Fred Williams and the Rich Kleins of an industry. Rich is rolling his eyes. And I saw you here, Fred, too. Don't deny it. So you have celebrities. You have people that draw others into an industry. I think we can all agree that Marlin did that. And then we also have the people that kind of sit behind the curtain. They're extremely humble people that just want to make sure that everybody is taken care of, that everything runs smoothly, that everybody is looked after. So we have this person that was an exemplary model of those three qualities that I don't think you ever really get in an industry. It's three rare qualities that, when combined, are an amazing thing that ends up having a massive impact on the people that are around him, right? So here's my ask. Over the past few years, maybe the past decade, I'm about to do something, by the way, that I think is going to make Rich mad, but I'll deal with him later. Over the past decade, we've been trying to get Marlin entered into the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. I think everybody here, based on that applause alone, agrees that if there's one person in this industry that deserves it, Marlin should be there. So, here's what I'm asking. We have this amazing industry of rock crawling that he is such an amazing example of. But the problem is that our industry is a relatively small industry when you look at the grand scheme of motorsports. There's some massive markets, massive industries in motorsports, and rock crawling just doesn't get a ton of attention compared to NASCAR, compared to Baja, compared to all these other motorsports out there. So, exactly, because we like to go slow. It's the most adrenaline you could ever get going less than 2 miles an hour. It's amazing. So a lot of times in the past, Marlin had been looked over by some other great names in the off-road motorsports world. And this year, I don't want it to happen again. So we have his application submitted. We have confirmation that they received it, but they will not talk about it. They will not announce a winner until August, September, the inductees to the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. So what I want every single person here to do is to email the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame directors and give them an example of why Marlin deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. If you have a story of sometime that he helped you on a trail, some part that you have that he created, something along those lines. You met him at an event and it just made you feel welcomed into the industry. Anything like that, send a story to, I'm going to give you guys an email right now. So everybody pull out your phones. I want you guys to write this down. Okay, good. Rich is giving me a nod, so he's not upset.
Do it tonight.
Do it tonight, he said. Just FYI, Rich is on the board for the Hall of Fame, so that's why he's about to get inundated with emails today. All right, so everybody ready? The email is directors@ormhof.org. That's Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame, ORMHOF.
And then CC me, BigRichKlein@gmail.com.
Hey.
Like I said, tonight or tomorrow, please.
Cool. That's awesome. Apparently, it sounds like there might be a timeline coming up, a deadline. So everybody get on that. So CC Rich, BigRichKlein@gmail.com, as well as the email to directors@ormhoff.org. We need to make this happen. There's not too many. The Ormhoff only gives people so many times to get submitted for consideration. And I believe this is the last time he can be submitted for consideration. He's been submitted twice before, so this is the third time, and I believe the limit is 3. Is it, or did? Okay.
Send the email like it depends on 3.
Yes, send the email tonight as if it depends on 3. So that's my ask. That's why I wanted to get everybody here that we could, not let people leave. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hearing more stories.
Ormhoff.
The spelling on Ormhoff, it's O-R-M as in Mike, H-O-F as in Foxtrot. .org. Yep, .org. K-L-E-I-N on Klein. So that's BigRichKlein@gmail.com.
And if we don't get the results we want, it's a camping trip at Big Rich's house in Georgetown. Okay, I'm coming to this side of the room. We spent some time over there.
Josh Rosado from Napa, California. It was August 16 of 1996. And I was at the Marlin Crawler headquarters on Maple Avenue, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I was dead tired, but the reason why I was leaving the shop at that time is that Marlin had just installed one of 17 or 20 transfer cases with the low gear in my FJ Cruiser. And it was the 6th one that he had installed, which made my FJ go down to 105 to 1 gear ratio on low because of my NV 4500 transmission that I had coupled with. We were headed for the Doozy-Ersham Trail right out of Fresno here, and I told my wife, I went to the hotel, got a shower, got an hour's sleep. We headed out at 6 o'clock to meet the club. And when we got there, on the way, I told Ruth, you're going to have to take it the first day because I don't think I have the concentration to be able to do that. And my wife says, oh, are you sure? Okay. She knew how tired I was. And I told her to just put it in second low and just stay steady throttle. When she got the Chicken Rock, she came right over and the dam and made it all the way through and then on up the Kaiser Pass. But one thing that I said, well, sweetheart, how about let me take it the second day? She says, oh, no, I'm enjoying this. And at age 51, this was the first time my lovely wife had driven as a driver on a 4-wheel event. Give her a hand. By the way, if you think that's a bunch of hokey, those of you that have been to the men's bathroom at the Crawler headquarters have seen this story. It's right there for your testimonial. It was on the Sports Utility 4-Wheel Drive magazine of September of '97. Right here on the podium, you see a very familiar logo, correct? All of us have some form of this on our rigs. You know, I didn't understand the real meaning of this crazy turtle logo until I talked to Marlin. And most of these logos say you're protected by Marlin Crawler. And then I understood what that meant. You know, the Armed Services has, we don't leave any wounded warriors in a battlefield. That's what this means. We don't leave anybody on the trail that's broken. Amen? And that's why every time I think of Marlin, I think of the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor? Marlin Crawler is your neighbor, and so forth. I took this to heart. One of the roundups, it was on the Rubicon, and these crazy young kids, bucks from Morro Bay, were hot dogging on the trail, and they rolled their mini truck, and they wrecked their axle. They limped into camp, and then somehow they made it back out to Loon Lake. It took them forever. They started out early, and they made it back to Loon Lake route. And I met them in Silver Springs, and I recognized them. And I said, where do you guys got to go? He says, we're headed for Morro Bay. I says, no, you're not. I took my cruiser off of my trailer, put their truck onto my trailer. I had my brother drive my cruiser to Napa, and I drove the truck and their truck. They slept they lay down in the back. I had a bed foam thing in the back of my pickup with a camper shell. And they came home. We got home about 3 o'clock in the morning. I told Ruth, I phoned her and I told her what the deal was. And so says, guys, take a shower. I gave them some pajamas and sweats to put on. Took their clothes, it was greasy and dirty, put it in the washer. And the next morning at 7 o'clock, I says, let's go home. So I drove all the way down to Morro Bay from Napa. That's 5 hours there and 5 hours back. And I asked him, he says, what are we going to give you? How much should we charge? He says, just pay me the gas. And, but that's what this little turtle is all about. When you're protected by the turtle, you're protected by Marlin in a very special way. The Good Samaritan.
Can you see me? Have any of you seen me at the Marlin Crawler Roundup? Does anybody know me from the Marlin Crawler Roundup? Darn straight. What did I tell everybody at the Roundup when it came to Marlin parts? You better have a Marlin part on your truck or get the heck out of our springs. So BigMike was talking about stories. How many of you brought your broken truck to the Marlin Crawler Roundup? Go ahead. Never do that again. Remember that? Marlin had spent the whole roundup working on other people's trucks, and we finally said enough is enough, right, Larry? We brought Ben in to do the mechanics, and where did we put Marlin? Right at the front of the dinner line. That way everybody who went by got to shake Marlin's hand. You know what the problem was? That line would be stacked up forever. He's signing breasts, he's signing this, he's signing, hey, move along, move along. Seriously, I met Marlin in '98 at the Mud and Dry Frolic. BigMike was a little guy, and when we departed, he looked at you and said, Pacific Mountain Cruisers, bonehead, which just cracked us up because we do a bonehead award, so we knew he'd fit right in. I was one of those first guys that went to the dark side. You know when you all drive around your Land Cruisers, and there's that guy that shows up in a mini truck? What's he doing here? He doesn't even belong, and if that guy goes any slower, I'm going to punch him. Straight up, all my stuff I bought from Marlin. He got all my business. When it came back to supporting our club, Marlin was always there. We do a swap meet in Petaluma. It's coming up on July 13th. Marlin was always there for us, okay? And Christine and BigMike, thank you, because if you guys saw these people's schedule of making all these events, you wonder how could they come down for our little event? But there you guys were, okay? Always supported us. I was Rubicon chairman for 10 years before Eric took it over, and then Ross Woody. Great time of my life, and I will say all of my volunteer efforts have come back to me 1,000-fold, okay? Meeting great people like Gary Cardam, Butch Baker, all the wonderful people in this room. I can't believe how many I know and recognize. When Marlin came to me and said, Tony, would you MC our event? I absolutely said, and I want to make it clear, it was my way to reciprocate for everything that your dad did for us personally, okay? And when you're at the roundup and everybody's having a good time and you're like, hallelujah, this is done, and then Marlin would look over at me and go, Tony, can we count on you again for next year? What could you say, BigMike? Yes. You bet, buddy. Anyhow, I'm very appreciative for the opportunities. I did get, just to wrap it up quickly, I did have a chance to do a bio on Marlin, actually sat down and wrote up his autobiography. Yes, he grew up poor, he didn't have a lot, but I'm a firm believer that those that start out in life with less always end up with more. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Marlin Crawler.
Well, I don't know how many people are actually going to recognize me, but the back of this shirt, as I turn around slowly, a lot of people will recognize as being on Marlin's truck when Marlin's truck didn't have a lot of stickers on it. So how many people can say they wheeled where they saw little Mike and his sister banging their heads around in the double Yosemite before it was an air tank on a trail in front of them? Because that means you've been around a long time. So I've got lots of stories, but the best one is, this logo is, got my truck, which was an 83 long bed Toyota, that Marlin, with his connections with TRD and Ivan Stewart, I'm a contractor, so this was my only vehicle. I had to work with it and everything else, but it was just what it was. It was an 83. Marlin, with his connections with TRD, late night, Christine knew, was working the valves, polishing my intake, changing to the Weber carburetor that was actually illegal, but TRD tagged it and said it was good. That truck had a lot of power. I had no gears. I went through the Rubicon. I went through almost all the trails here. I was pretty much box stock for a long time. I ended up being the contact I think that Marlin could count on almost at any time to make a phone call and say, hey, can you drop what you're doing? I got to go save somebody. And we'd run up to the Rubicon, across the slabs, midnight. I'm telling Marlin, your lights are great, but we can't see anything. You've been on this trail, you know it like the back of your hand, but we can't see anything. We don't hear anybody. We don't have anything coming in on the radio. Well, the people, I guess, had gotten out before we even got there. We slept on a slab, on a tarp, with bags, sleeping bags. And we woke up the next morning, and we started out, and we found a Jeep. Busted, bad, rear axle, splintered, like you had skied and just grenaded it right before the spline gears where it went into the differential. Marlin said, you know, I've got my welder, which a lot of you might recognize me more if I was in my orange prison jumpsuit as Marlin's secondary welder, because he would be so busy wrenching people that he'd say, James, can you weld this while I'm fixing somebody else? And I did. I welded a lot of things with Marlin's welders. And we took that Jeep and that axle, and we spent probably 5 or 6 hours sitting there with a little piece of angle iron and the two pieces, you know, spaced apart at Marlin's measurement. He knew how long it was supposed to be from tip to this, and we welded that up. And I think that Jeep was from, I don't know if you're here, he was from Colorado, I think. He drove the rig out and he drove it back to Colorado without ever changing anything. And it was just that commitment that Marlin had, like people said. He wouldn't leave anybody, even a Jeep, stuck on a trail. And he'd, at a drop of a hat, run and go and try to rescue anybody and everybody. I think all of us could probably raise our hands and say, he's fixed this, right? On the trail at some point or time? Well, I can tell you of one time on a trip to the Rubicon with this little 83 I had. I told him, I said, Marlin, I said, you know that badass Center Force 2 twin clutch that I had? I think that thing's toast. He goes, how bad do you think it is? I said, I think it's toast. I don't think I should go on the Rubicon. I think I'll lose it going up Cadillac Hill. Dan and Cindy Schuler, you're not in here, are you? Okay, so old gang, toys for fun. Marlin goes, I tell you what you do. take a clutch with you. And if you break, we'll fix it, or you know how to change it. Well, yeah, my clutch burned out. Dan and Cindy had awesome FJs. They each had their own. They were leaving early to miss the big wagon train going up Cadillac. My clutch went out, and I ended up getting towed by Dan and his awesome rig, and he basically told me, as I'm pulling you, I'm going to keep going. If you end up dangling off the edge and I can keep pulling you, that's one thing. But you're the one that came on the trail with a clutch, spare clutch, and a clutch you knew that was out. And it was like Marlin that was like, I'll fix you if I need to. So the thing I think we all need to do is know that there's not too many people that would have the compassion for a stranger to take his transfer case out, put it in somebody else's rig, and let them go the rest of the way on the trail. And he worried how he was going to get out himself later. So what I'd like to ask is, as we're all out wheeling, at some point in time, when we start on the trail and we have that turtle on our rig, we bless the trail with Marlin's compassion to take care of everybody that's using it. Because I can tell you that man would back up several miles to pick a can up that was on the side of the trail. Not for the recycle value, but because he didn't like to see the litter eater. So, Bevin, I know you've got some stuff to say, so thank you all.
I'm Bevin Lane. I met Marlin in 1986 at the Fresno swap meet. And that was the beginning of the greatest relationship of my life. And also the trailer, I wanted to just kind of add a little to the trailer comment earlier, how it was to watch him drive with the with the trailer behind the vehicle. Well, we didn't have, Marlin and Chris didn't have the Tundra all the time. They started out with a 4Runner. Well, the 4Runner was not big enough to do much, but I'm telling you something. We had 13,000 pounds on the trailer and in the truck in the 4Runner, and came back from Ohio. And when it came to hills, it was over. Brakes, no brakes. He's from California, so I forgive him for running the cruise control with the trailer at night on glare ice. I happened to wake up thinking that I was safe, and I'll just let him drive. He's awake. He's eating sunflower seeds. What can go wrong? I wake up, he's doing like 70 miles an hour with the cruise control and glare ice, and he said, dude, we're gonna die. So he goes, oh, don't worry about it. You can't drive with the cruise control and trailer. I said, well, not usually on ice. So anyway, next thing that we found was wild animals trying to cross the road faster than you were driving, and with the cruise on, that could be difficult. So a coyote's coming out of the woods. We can see him coming across. We were in Nebraska at 2 o'clock in the morning, because when is it ever 7 a.m.? And the coyote beat us to the trailer. He went to the trailer hitch, and that's where he went under the rototiller and just it was over. But Marlin says, well, we didn't even get any damage on that one. And, that was good. Got no damage. There wasn't anything wrong with the 4Runner. Christine's not going to have any trouble with that. So we noticed that there was quite a mess under the trailer. But, that's just part of his chasing parts. Now, if you can imagine having a business like this, and he had arrangements with people in different states everywhere, talking about getting axles, talking about getting transfer cases. You can't buy these things. You're not manufacturing the cases, so you have to come up with them somewhere. And that trailer was packed. Tony had a little, was that Datsun Toyota or body or something? I don't know. Anyway, it was a small pickup bed that was made into a trailer. We filled that thing up. I don't know how the tires made it, but they did. just kind of cool memories. And one time the ask came for him to come rescue me off the road, not in the trail, but he's done that as well. The road trip was up above, just headed to Oakhurst, and my timing belt blew on my pickup. It was Friday afternoon, about 6, and I'm on the side of the road. And where on 41 can you park your car? Not really overnight or anything. You don't want to leave it. And I said, what do I'll call a tow truck, and we'll just, we'll tow it down, figure it. He says, I'll go to AutoZone right now. Where are you at? Told him exactly where I was. He says, I'll be there in an hour. Marlin time. Let me tell you what, I don't care how long. I knew he was coming. And wow, bought the parts, came there, spent 2 hours, put them on. Rescued me and my family parked on the side of the road in the heat. So I know there's 1,000 stories like that people can tell. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Thomas. So, Mike, I'm just a couple of years short of the 20 years. I'm so jealous of that. I met Marlin trying to get some business out of him, and he gave me something to do. And a lot of people can't, maybe a lot of you can say, but, helping Marlin's hard. And when you do help him, he returns it back to you like you can't even imagine. I have 2 vehicles that he completely built from nothing. How many of you, by raise of hand, has ever taken a vehicle to Marlin and you just want to do like a head job or something, or adjust my valve, and you come back the next day and it's just a block sitting there, completely taken apart, and you're going, what happened here? And then here's the one that you're going to know too. Oh, Thomas. Oh, well, this and that, and then he just goes on and on and on. I've had the pleasure of being, he is like a father to me. I've been working super close with him for many, many years. The Czajkowskis are like family to me. All the group, everybody that's ever worked at Marlin Crawler for all the years, I think they all deserve a big shout out too. Amazing people. I love them all. I always tell Mike and I always tell Dave, you don't have a bigger fan than me when it comes to Marlin Crawler. A bigger supporter. I love them so much. Anything that they've ever needed, I've always done for them, and I will continue to do so. Thank you guys so much for sharing Marlin with me. I have tons of stories too. I can just say I was super blessed to be able to be around him a whole lot more than maybe some of you. We worked a lot together, and he was a real life genius, amazing. I always told him he was a living legend, and he would be like, oh, Thomas, God, stop it. But he really was, and now he truly is a legend. He's always been a legend, and the most humble person that I know, and I'm just so glad to see the turnout. God bless you all.
My name's Jerry from Henderson, Nevada. I met Marlin after I saw the Ultimate Crawler transfer case in a magazine, and it's early on. Call him up, yeah, we'll have it for you, pull the transfer case, throw it in my neighbor's car, we shoot out here to get it. We get there, guy in the shop looks at me and goes, we ain't got no transfer case for you. Marlin comes out of the office, you got 5 hours, you'll have one. So he built it right then, put it in. Also used to belong to Southern Nevada Land Cruisers, put on the Glitter Gulch Gamble. Marlin come out for that, it was awesome. He showed everybody up as slow as possible. One of the interesting things that happened, my original truck was a short wheelbase with extra cab on it, what I put it in. He knew that. The next gamble that he showed up to, I had a 4Runner. It was almost like he didn't recognize me. And the first thing he did, he crawls under the truck, comes out, and he goes, "That was in a different truck," by the number on the transfer case. As for Marlin's intelligence and awe, if you asked him a question about something, a part, he rattled off the part number. Before the kit was available for the dual chain timing cover, or timing chain for the 22R, he goes, "Oh yeah, it's a 96 link BMW," rattles off the number and tells me what things to get from this and everything else. And it worked. I wish I could have recorded half of the stuff that I talked with him. He was an amazing man. And I still got that truck, and I still got that transfer case. So.
I've got pretty deep roots in the Forest Service, and I met Marlin through that avenue. With a show of hands, how many people commit individually or through a club to work on public lands and do stuff? Raise your hands, please. And how many people here do that on the Sierra National Forest? And I hope that you guys hear how important you are and what a blessing it is for us to be able to create access through groups like this, individuals like you that commit to public lands. I have deep roots in the Forest Service. I'm not wearing a pickle suit. You might be able to identify at least one other here. But I have been with the Forest Service for a long time. I met Marlin through an Adopt a Trail meeting. Is BirdDog still around? Oh, right on. Yeah, this adds to the story because in the days, how many have been to an Adopt a Trail meeting? In the day, BirdDog would be in the back with Marlin. And this tall guy came out of wilderness. Some might say it was a flower sniffer and wore flip-flops. More redheaded then, but we had this revolving door in the Forest Service locally that maybe there wasn't a sense of trust. Finally encouraged Marlin and BirdDog to come forward, interact, because it's obvious they were leaders in the community. And so eventually they did that. And that moved on to, for me, 3 trips on the Ducey-Ursham Trail. How many have been on the Ducey-Ursham Trail? My goodness. So besides Mr. Rock Crawler, to me he's Mr. Ducey, and there's many people in this room that have shared information, historical perspective on Ducey that taught me on that. But in my pickle suit, I actually rode in the Marlin Crawler. And that must have been a gift of some sort. The other thing is that we had 3 trips. One of them we came out in snow. It was all planning trips. Most of you that have been on Ducey know of Ursham Crossing, right? So we had a project at Ursham Crossing, and how many people in this room worked on that trip way late in the fall? Okay. So we moved 60 loads of rock, created a new crossing at Ursham, so 30 tons of rock. And the gift of that thing was hanging out with people in the off-road community and being a part of stuff with campfires and learning stories. And I can tell you that Marlin was huge with family. I remember sitting around at a bonfire. Because I'm a wilderness person, I had to tone down the fire. But sitting around and learning about family, and he would discuss family over and over again and how important that was to him. So he just didn't turn wrenches and drive Toyotas. How many drive Jeeps?
I don't want to.
All right, so. Yeah, all you guys come forward to drive Jeeps, then you get in the front, we'll shoot you all. Okay. But besides knowing Marlin as a person, and with BirdDog, who's still around me, inviting me to some breakfasts, hanging out in club meetings, and getting to know Marlin more, we do have an incriminating picture. He was in a Forest Service Jeep YJ, pulling rock and contributing that. He didn't really smile when I took his picture in the Jeep. Mike and Gary, do you still have that photo?
Burn it!
Anyway, to sum it up, to be around Marlin, to be around this community, you guys are truly loyal, humble, committed. You work your butts off for the Forest Service, who doesn't always contribute at that same level, but you've been a gift in my life, and I just want to say thank you.
All right, as you guys can feel the energy gaining, these stories are just getting started. You have the honor of being our last, and we're going to wrap this section. But we want to make sure that this doesn't slow down the storytelling today. That it happens in the smaller groups, or if you want to hang out here where it's not so hot outside, that those stories just keep telling. But that's where we're at in the schedule. BirdDog, you got to hold them both.
Hope I don't pass out. If I do, I have a no resuscitate clause. Yeah. I go by BirdDog or Camp Bitch. Fatso. Prison guard for 23 years. I got plenty of names. I met Marlin in, I think, 96. Dave Skaggs, Linda Skaggs introduced me. I had a Land Cruiser that I sold, and I ended up getting a 4Runner. And the Bronco was before the Land, yeah, after.
Before he got converted.
That's right, I forgot about the Bronco. So, thanks to Marlin Crawler, Rocky, actually Dave Carnahan started the project, Cruiser Dave, Rocky, CJ, all the crew had a big part in building my rig. I'm so grateful. And I always got the homeboy discount. I don't know why. I think we all did. But I could go on for, like Mike, I could tell stories for a week of trips with him, volunteering to cook. I don't know how to cook, but I'm willing to. So I'm that dummy that's willing to do it. I guess the highlight of my time with Marlin was there's a lot of locals here, and we understand that we're blessed to know the man, and we're blessed to have him locally. A lot of you come from distance. The locals, there's a lot of club members here, different clubs, and we are thoroughly blessed to have that man in our lives. He incredible. It must have been about 12 years ago, maybe. I can't remember how long ago, but the club, somebody stepped down as the Ducey chair. I think it was Bob Wagers. And so I was willing to do it, but I'm not going to do it alone. That's 33 miles of Jeep trail that needs to be managed. So I thought Marlin needed to do it with me. So I went to Marlin. At first he said no. And then he went home, and I don't know if he talked to Christine or not, but he called me when I got home, and he said, you know what? I'll do it. And so me and him were trail chairs for Ducey Erstrom for about, I think it was 6 years. And those of us that are blessed to have been close to him knew that the only way to get the man to get his mind to stop was to get him away from his shop. And it was either on a cruise or on a camping trip or a work trip in the mountains. And then the goal was to keep him there, because I can't tell you the number of times we would do a work trip on Ducey, and he's wanting to leave the first night or second night and go back home because he needs to build a carburetor from some guy in Chattanooga that's sitting on his bench that can wait. So, Bevin, James, little offside story. My rig, the thing that plagued me on my rig was the frame cracking. It had to be welded. James Atteberry took it to him. Marlin assured me that he knows what he's doing. He pulls out a door hinge out of his toolbox, and he starts working this door hinge to fit over my frame. Anyway, that weld is the only one that held. Yeah. Good job. There's so many stories, but me and Marlin were a good team. We were blessed in the club to get that period of time that we were the trail chairs, we got the toilets put on Ducey. And that was my goal. I wanted to get toilets put at quite a few locations on Ducey, and we were able to put 5 in. It's hard to know which stories to tell. I know, you mentioned, the other guy mentioned taking a project to him, and this is what I need fixed. So one of the last big projects on my rig was we were putting in a York, and so I took it to him. I was on a waiting list, by the way, to get the work done. Which, yeah, but so we get the rig in there, we get it apart. We pull the front end apart, the radiator, because we need to get in there because he has to make some bracketry. He sees a crack in my frame. And so we start taking things apart to clean up the area we need to fix the weld. Got late, we both went home, and so the deal was I come back in the morning and we'll finish up the York install. Come back in the morning and my engine is on a stand outside of the rig, and prime example, it just, if he saw a problem, he was gonna fix it. And the other problem was the man could never give me a bill. He would never invoice me. And I know I'm not the only one. Many people here.
We all owe Christine.
Yes, we do. One of the memorable, so other than, a lot has been said about how busy the man was. Clubs, running a business, a family. The man was a volunteer. He did trail work, along with everything else the guy did. He never said no. He never told me no, not one time. Huge heart. When I think of Marlin, I think more like an uncle, probably not a father, but an uncle, and a good example that not many I've had in my life, but he was a giver. He was an innovator, yes, all those things. But I see him as one of the biggest givers I've ever known. Endlessly giving. I wish we could have got you the picture, but I think we have a picture somewhere of him with his face in a toilet. So when we did the install at Thompson Lake, the toilet, partly my fault, but I let him take the blame. There was a square marked in our floor to cut for the toilet, for the seat, for the riser. So he goes up and I said, hey, Marlin, we need to cut a hole right there. And so he goes in and he cuts a square hole. So we bring the round toilet in there. So yeah, he got a picture. We had to replace that whole floor, but it's one of the many, many stories. There's so many. I'm blessed to have spent so much time with that man. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mrs. BirdDog. I won't take much time. As I was sitting listening to all that y'all said, it occurred to me all of a sudden that without Marlin in our lives, we wouldn't have half of the memories that we have with our 2 children. Our hobby was off-roading, and our children went with us. And they're now 37 and 35 years old. And they will hold those memories in their hearts like we do for the rest of their lives. And I thank Marlin for that.
We got Tony back here. Yeah, come on. Do y'all feel this is a tough poll here?
I know we're running out of time, but since I worked for Marlin for many years, I wanted to share what I got. I got to know Marlin. He came to our school straight out of college as a maintenance man, and he also helped teach small engines and auto repair. And right after college, I noticed that he's always working on people's cars at his home, you know, and he got to the point where he had so many cars there that I asked him, Marlin, can I work for you? Can you hire me so I could do these little jobs that don't take any time so you could concentrate on your own jobs? So he did. He hired me. We became good friends, and through the years, Marlin had a heart of compassion. We all know that. And his heart was big. A lot of times, there's 2 occasions where he drove all the way up to the Grapevine just to one of our customers' car broke down, and he drove up to the Grapevine to put a timing belt in that car at no charge. And another time I remember he went up out of town to fix a Marlin Crawler at no charge. Marlin, we had, I'm not much of a public speaker, so you got to bear with me here.
Here, let me help you.
Yeah, let's see where we're at here.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So,
I got you, Tony.
You know, what's amazing that a lot of you know how much Marlin liked to talk. And Marlin would always talk and explain things to people, especially our customer, how things work, how they fix. And people would say, wow, Marlin, you're never going to make any money talking to people. But on the contrary, let me tell you, Marlin started 2 very successful businesses that are still doing very well today. One is the Marlin Automotive, which became the Marlin and Tony's Auto Repair, because he made me a partner on that business side. And the other one, of course, is the Marlin Crawler. And he did that so he had time to build the Marlin Crawler. So that's what happened. I started the automotive, and he built the Marlin Crawler as it is now. I remember one time we went backpacking, because Marlin liked to backpack and hike. And we were up on top of, there's 4 or 5 guys of us, some of us are here, and we were at the Little Yosemite, going up to Half Dome. And we looked around and we couldn't find Marlin. He says, well, he must have got trailed way behind. You know, let's just go up there and we'll wait for him up there. Well, when we got up there, to our surprise, he was sitting there by a rock. His camp was all made up, and he looked at us like, wow, what took you guys so long? I've been waiting here forever. You know, so I'm really going to miss Marlin's sense of humor and all he's done for me.
Sorry, I didn't take notes. One more story. Someone said how he's fixing stuff on the trail. The man never stopped. And one time before our rigs became trailer queens, we were on the roundup, and he was welding on so many rigs he burned up his alternator. So I'm pretty sure Christine was there. We loaded up, we left, and he said, "No, we're gonna limp home, and you got to get me home." So we changed the battery at the Springs, and then we changed the battery again at the parking lot. So we pulled the battery out of my rig, put it in his, put the bad one into my rig. Then we made it down the hill on 80. We did this all night. We got home at 4 in the morning. Changed the battery like 4 times. The man would disable his vehicle to get you home. Or that kid who showed up with, he had never torqued the knuckle and never greased the knuckle in his life. Shows up to do the roundup. Marlin's fixing his rig, taking parts off of his rig to fix that rig. Anyway, he was amazing.
Amen. So I think what we're going to do is that we'll close, air quotes. Those of you who need to go, I know Christine and family want to say hi to you too. The truck show is out there, but Mike and I made an executive decision and said the microphones will stay laying here, and if you'd like to come and share stories and you'd like to sit and hear the stories, the family would love to have those stories recorded and heard, because it's the archive of a legacy of a man that made such an impact in our lives. So I think that's the sort of the soft landing of our time here. So with that, this is a scripture that Marlin could have recited to you. It's from Revelation chapter 21, verse 21. John, again in vision, said, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he'll dwell with them. And they will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, nor mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old things have passed away.'" So until then, rest easy, dear Marlin. We'll see you on the other side. And we'll be looking for that red hat. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you that you didn't create us to be alone on this planet. Thank you for the gift of Marlin's life, his example, the influence and inspiration that he's been to each one of us. Thank you for the community that formed because of him, and the long-term friendships that each of us share in this room, because he was the contact point. He was the sort of the connector of so many demographics and groups of people. Thank you for the diversity in this room. And Lord, I just pray that the stories would continue today, continue throughout the years to come, and that we would remember what really matters in life because of the life that we were able to share with Marlin. And thank you, God, that this is not the end, but there is a future ahead. And so today we say good night, Marlin. We'll see you in the morning. Amen.
I am Marlin Czajkowski from Marlin Crawler, located in Fresno, California. We are 6 hours north and currently parked at Parking Lot in the Sky near the end of the famous Rubicon Trail. Happy to be here. The sun is nice and bright, so I'm squinting a little. This is a trail that I originally traveled in 1984, long before the Marlin Crawler was even thought of. This was one of the main reasons, is that when I was on this trail, I saw so many Jeeps going so slow, I wanted to go slow like a Jeep. And I'm happy to say that many years later, that we have done well.